So hello everyone, welcome to Code One, and I'm gonna cover the complete understanding and line by line code explanation of the online ticket booking system. I can say online movie project. So what we are going to cover in this project. So if you have better understanding of the things like how the MVC is working, and if you've gone through the previous videos that are easily cover all the things like how can we insert a data, how can we create this framework, and how can we pass JS data to JSP to Servlet, and how can we pass the data JSP to database, and what is maven, and how can we manage the dependency. So now let's switch to the complete project and build project. So today we are going to cover in this series like online movie ticket booking system. So what exactly things we are going to cover in this? The very first, utility packages. So what are the things we have in the utility packages, like data utility class and the data validator class, data properties class, servlet utilities. Then we'll switch to model classes, then exception classes, then beans, and then we'll discuss about the servlets like controllers and all the JSP and designs. So without wasting time, let's switch to the code, and I'm going to run the project. The very first, so I select some server, Tomcat server, click on next. So it's going to be deploy, and let's switch to the resource section and hit the JSP section and hit the welcome.jsp. Whenever the application is going to run, the very first page will open is called welcome.jsp. Let me show you if it's running properly. It's still in process. So you can see, and the package is the very first URL is going to be run as a welcome.jsp. And next thing, let's switch on these things one by one. So as I told you, let me explain you at the very first what is the util package is doing here, and then we'll come to JSP things. So we have some packages in src main.java. The first one is beans, controller, exception, model, and the util. So if I'm gonna clear the bean classes or util classes, so in the util we have data utility. What exactly the data utility is doing here? So for example, if I'm gonna perform some operation with any kind of data, like if I'm gonna pass a object type data, if I'm gonna pass a integer type data, and I want to convert the data in an integer, and I want to pass a string, and I want to trim that string for the multiple time. So for every operation we create a multiple methods that whenever we need the data according to the requirement, we'll call this method. For example, if you can see here, this is the method which is called get string, and it will return a string, and it takes as an input as a value. Or what it's doing, it's going to check is null or not, like the value is coming from the input is null or not. If it's not null, then it's going to trim the string. It means it's going to trim the spaces from the front and the end, and then it will return that particular value. And so what is this is null method is coming, so from where? So it's also in the same class, data validator, and it's checking from here like is null, so it's passing a value. Whenever we call this method, we pass a value and it will check is null or not. So here like this, and like we are using some kind of data format, date format in the application. So we fix we provide a final variable as a date format, so we keep that format as a mmddyy. So whenever we need to need a particular date format, we will call this from the data utility. When you see the servlet code, you will find this this method, this name. So at that time we'll show you from where the data will come in. Get string data, and the next is get integer data. For example, if I'm gonna some user is entering his date, his age, so he's entering in the input 26. So when the user is going to enter the value from the input box, value comes in a string format. Somewhere we need, for example, somewhere we need to make some calculation. So how can we perform that calculation in the string value? So somewhere we need to convert that value, that string value in the integer. So what we can do, we create a method under the data utility. So convert that string value, convert this string value into the integer. So just we use the parse and things. So data validator is integer value. So yes, it's parse into value. So it's going to be written a integer value. Same if you want to convert something in the get long, so we can convert from here. Same the get date, and convert the value, convert a string value into the date format, or convert a string value into the again date format. And somewhere if I want to convert the date into the string, so this method is for that. And timestamp, if I want to use the timestamp, so here is a method get timestamp. And these are the classes like that, these are the methods we can keep in the data utility. So it's not fixed, it depends on the requirement of the project and what kind of project we are developing. And if according to the requirement, I can add many methods there. It's totally depend on the requirement. If you don't want to add, so you can remove it. That's it. Let's switch to the data validator. What is a data validator? So somewhere whenever we are going to enter the Gmail, like for example from the input box, from the input field, I'm gonna put like this. From this field I'm gonna enter an email ID. So how can I verify that email ID is valid or not? So there are lots of input box in the complete application. Like for if you switch to the sign up program, so so there is an input, the username and the last name and the password. So how can I verify the field is coming from the front end is valid or not? So we create a data validator. It will help us to validate the data. So like here we have is name. So here we are validating the data. So for example, if I want to verify his name, it's like it's like for the from the front end, like if user going to enter a username, so then the first name or last name, that string should be valid. Like it should be a string value. It should be not contain some character or some some digits there. So how can I verify this? So we create a method, is called isName, and it will take input as a argument as a value, and it will perform that regex operation, and it will return a complete value. It will return a true or false boolean section, like it's a valid string or not. So if you are not understanding this thing, what is this regex, you have to search about this of the Google. So regex for email, regex in Java, you can read this thing. So it will help you to understanding the regex expressions. So basically I'm going to show you a brief idea about it. It's a kind of format to match the string. Like if you wanna match or compare some string, some kind of a string, so we will keep the exactly mean of this line is that like a value can be A to Z in capitals and A to Z in smalls, and other integer value will not match here. So similarly, if I wanna match roll number, so here we have a method is roll number, and this string will take 0 to 9 integer, 0 to 9 any integer value which length is 2, and A to Z which length is 2, and 0 to 9 which length is 1. So we create an expression here. Similarly, is password, is phone number is null, So this data validator is all about to check the data is valid or not. So whenever we need to validate the data, whenever we need to pass a check there to check the data is valid or not, we will call this data validator. We will call the object of data validator and call this method. So for this project, email builder and email message is not required, email utility is also not required. Let's come to the JDBC data source. So if you know the MyDB class, in the old tutorials, MyDB class is help to create a connection from the database. So here in the whole project, how can we manage the database connection? So here we have the class is called JDBC data source. So let's show me at the very first the property class here. So I'm gonna move to src main resource in co and ticket bundle and the system.property file. So what exactly the system.property file is doing here? So it's kind of properties file that set the properties of the application, and we are going to check like if I'm going to pass some strings, I want to create a variable with some strings so I can keep it here. So in the application we are using some kind of error message like is required. We're gonna, as a response, we are going to show this message. So I pass a variable error.required at the 0 index is required. We will call it later and you will understand it. So let's move to the exactly what we are doing is we are trying to understand the database connection parameter. So in as you saw in the old example in mydb.java, that's where there was a URL in the driver, in the com.mysql, all the things are there. So these things we are managing here. I pass a string value which is URL and I pass the exact URL of your database. So you can see it's running on the port number 3306 and the database name and the driver name com.mysql driver name as a com.mysql, the JDBC driver, and the username of my database is root and the password is root. Acquire the increasing size 10 initial pool size, max pool size, minimum pool size, and timeout. So these are the things according to the database parameter. So whenever we need to create a connection from the database, we need this kind of parameter. So that's why we are passing the parameter here, because it's a common and use in the entire project. So we pass the things in the system.property file. This kind of property, this is a kind of property file which contain the parameters. So these parameters are related to the database. Let's switch to the database source. Now we need to create a connection and somewhere we need to call this URL. So how can I call that URLs? So at the very first I need to call this file. So where I'm calling this file, you can see it's kind of resource bundle. So we are creating an object of resource bundle rv equals to resource bundle, and we are calling a method is called get bundle, which is a pre-built method. And if switch to, you can see get resource bundle using the specific base name, default, local, the callers loader calling. So and here as a string we are passing the location of the file. So my file location is in co online ticket.bundle and the file name is system. So this is the exact location of my file. Now we are creating an object of data source and we are creating a connection pool here, and exactly inside this connection pool, inside this database connection, what we need to pass, we need to pass the URL of my database and driver and the username and the password. So exactly the same thing we are doing here. Set JDBC URL, we call the method set JDBC URL and rv dot get string. So what is the rv? Rv is a reference of that resource bundle. It means it's rv contains all the parameters of database which come from the system file. So rb.get string, we get the string which is name as a URL, so we pass that URL. It means indirectly this complete string will pass, that complete string will pass here whenever we call it. Same thing, data source set user, so we pass a username here, we pass the password here, and the initial pool size, requires maximum size, and all that things we pass here. So data source as a library, we create an instance of data source to create in particular connection, you can see here, and we create an instance of JDBC data source, then we create a connection pool on the database in the data on the data source, and then we set the complete URL and other details here, and at that end it will return a data source. Data source, it means a connection of the instance of a data. So here some more method is there to get the connection, close the connection. So for the close the connection, get close connection, to get the instance, to get instance of CPDS get connection. So we create a connection. What is the exactly CPDS? CPDS is here, like we need to create a pool connection of the data source. So this method will responsible to create a pool connection, and then we will get a connection here in the get connection method, and then we'll, if you want to close the connection, we'll call this method and return to the close connection, and as their turn rollback or something, then we can call the rollback connection, rollback initial label. You can ignore this, and I hope this will be understandable for you. So data source, let's switch to the another section. If you have some doubt here, you can easily contact me or comment me, so we'll try to or elaborate it more in detail, so it will be easy to understand this method. So like the old way was different, and this is a different way, but some similar kind of same approach is there that we are following. Okay, next switch to the property reader. So here also, like this is exactly about the reading these parameters. Like for the database, we are using we are reading the data from the separate parameter. It means from the system.property for the JDBC connection, we are calling the parameters. So we create a separate connection, but if you can see, there are lots of parameters are there. Different parameters are there, like size, page size, and the you can say the path of the image path, and other error messages are there. So these also required to be called. So in the reader.property, exactly we are doing the same. We create again an object of resource bundle or get bundle, and pass the complete path in code.online.ticket.bundle.system, and get string value, and we are passing the key. So whenever we need a value from this resource bundle or system.property, we will call this method get value and pass a key. It means key means the name of the variable, like error.required. So we will pass that variable name at the time of calling this method, or directly. Here we are passing the data, the value directly, but here in the property.reader we will pass at the time of calling. Same as with a single parameter, if key with param or if key with array list. Like if you want to call some list and some multiple data, so we can use array things. That's it. So this is all about the property.reader. Let's switch to the servlet utility. What exactly servlet utility will doing? So if you observe in the complete util package, we are doing the things that we need to use in the entire project again and again. It's like whatever the method and whatever the classes, whatever the functionalities, whatever the method we need in the project, multiple time we are passing the things here. Same in the servlet utility. Sometime when we are performing some operation in the servlet, we need to use multiple redirection, multiple forward, and so the static way is like I can do that things whenever it's required. So it's a very weird way to do things like that. So same code is repeating again and again. So we create a servlet utility, and we are passing the forward, we are creating some methods here, some common methods here. Like for if I need to forward some requests, so I call this method forward and I pass the object the page name, like where I need to forward, then and the request and the response. What exactly this method will do, it will call the request dispatcher and request.get request dispatcher and page. It means this is a pre-built method from the request and so on, and it will dispatch the particular redirection on that particular page. And if you know, if you are confusing here, you can just go Google and just take a help of them from the Google and read about this request dispatcher. Same thing we are using for the redirection. If I wanna redirect some page, or like for user, if user is logged in successfully, and servlet will check the user name and password is correct or not. If it is correct, it's going to redirect on the other application or of the other page. So for example, for the welcome page, so at that time we'll call this redirect method and we'll pass the page name and then request object and the response object. So response object will send redirect to that particular page, so we'll call it. And for the handling the exception, get the error message and get messages, get error message, there are lots of methods are there, but the main two methods that we are using in multiple times is the redirection and the forward. So this is all about the util package, and in next section we will see the model classes, and then we'll come to the exception, then the bean classes, and then we'll come to the controller part and the JSP part.